welcome to the show. This is our live broadcast of the Free Zone, and it was just Earth Day, so give you kind of an idea where we're at. Let's take this to the flat Earth. Let's go ahead and open the flat Earth door, because we've already talked about Mars. Yeah. We've talked about chemtrails. We've talked about all of this. So when we're looking at a puzzle where everything is so unreal that everything we know is completely false, we don't know what electricity is, we don't know what gravity is. I've never really believed that you could spin on a ball going 1,100 miles an hour while traveling around a sun at 6,600 or 66,600 miles an hour. Where's the proof in the round Earth, right? I want to understand Mars, the sun, the seasons. Are you guys ready to dig into flat Earth?
Yeah, the season.
As a precipice to just illustrate, and I'm generally speaking for the flat Earth community at large as a representative of all of these personalities that have been involved in this movement, probably since the tail end of 2014. And I initially got introduced to this conversation in the spring of 2015 as I was driving across the flat plains of Kansas, which is arguably one of the flattest regions in the entire North American region.
Unless you're in Lawrence.
And I queued up the celebrated Higher Side Chat show with his interview on Eric Dubé. And all of us who are into the alternative media stuff, I'll take in anything. Initially out of the gates, I thought it was ridiculous. I just literally laughed. I was like, oh, flat Earth.
People get angry about
right,
this.
and
They're
my
like,
general
oh my God, I can't
default,
believe you're talking like this.
Default fallback mode was to laugh, to just brush it aside as absurd. But I rest assured, if you actually weather through and sit through that seminal, groundbreaking THC interview with Eric Dubé on that legendary show, which really, that show went viral. It really set the precedent for the narrative. By the end of the show, I was screaming out the window of my van on some road trip driving across Kansas in disbelief, like, what? I was just flatlined, to pun intended. And literally. I immediately catapulted myself to the front line of this warrior narrative and devoured everybody from Matt Powerland to Mark Sargent to the Morgile to Wakey Wakey, Eric Dubé, all of these amazing people right in the beginning of this movement. And I really still believe at this point when people ask me, where do I start? I'm like, start at the beginning. Like if you get into a band, start with the first album. If you're into an author, start with the first book. If you're into the flat Earth, start in the mid 2015 and go back and dig out all of those really great documentaries and all the great narrative around that time. So by the time I got back home from this month-long road trip, I ordered Eric Dubé's book. I ordered all the old books from the 19th century, and I just started downloading like mad and taking in this conversation at the most maddening pace I've never witnessed in my search of gnosis and truth. By the end of 2015, I could not debunk the flat Earth model. On the contrary, I became, literally by the end of the year, I was almost 100% convinced that the Earth was flat. And some of the books that I brought here that you can see, the cool thing about this movement that I need to stress overwhelmingly is that it's based in academia. It's based in using the scientific method, using logic, reason, and common sense. It's a rogue academic movement of true logic, reason, and common sense. And every single flat Earth argument is based in those tenets of using logic, reason, and common sense to look out at your world and to actually see what you really see. One of the book that started this great thing was the unbelievable Eric Dubé's book that came out in November of 2014, which is the first flat Earth book published in over 50 or 60 years. And it's literally an overarching overview of every argument and concept. It's very scientific. It's very logical. It's very matter of fact. By the time you read this thing, you will either, one, be on the fence or be a flat earther. And I was completely, almost 95% a flat earther at this point. There's no way that you can read this book and not at least find the argument compelling. Now, it gets better. In the 18th century, in 1865, Zetetic Astronomy was written. This was a book written by the legendary Samuel Burley Robotham here. And this is an amazing book that really suggested again, using the scientific method to postulate the fact that we appear to live on a flat plane. And then in the wake of that one, another book was written, William Carpenter, 100 Proofs that the Earth is not a Globe. This was in 1886. Again, an academic document from the 1880s celebrating this conversation. And it continues, 1901. And then a number of other books that came up till the present day. And then the recent unbelievable book by Zen Garcia, translating the Book of Enoch in the Flat Earth. These are serious academic documents that if you have an academic disposition, which I do, you will really resonate with these. So one of the things about this conversation that I cannot stress enough is that it's based in academia. It's not based in religion or Christianity or fundamentalist beliefs in some nonsensical, dogmatic nonsense. It's based in true academic speculation and research.
Go and research yourself. There's so many people doing it now. They're really making a point.
Right.
Of researching it themselves. They're not just taking it face value what someone's saying. They're actually going and doing the research themselves.
It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. It has exploded.
Yeah. It's bizarre.
It's not only bizarre, I think it's absolutely beautiful and liberating. And
Isaac Newton with the gravity thing and Galileo. So that's when it shifted. Everyone prior to that thought that the Earth was flat. So that's when it was designed at that point.
I think we're probably talking about a high-level deception that's propagated by extremely wealthy consortium of unseen forces that have brought us.
Let's start there. What would be the point of convincing us the world is round? Why would they go through so much effort to convince us that the world is round?
They flew over the South Pole, and that's when NASA came into play. For real.
And formed the...
So that'd be Admiral Byrd?
Yeah, they formed the Anarchy Treaty to protect Antarctica, which was actually a treaty to keep the general populace from discovering...
But why?
There's no South Pole.
I was hoping to get into some of the science first and some of the reasons why later, but to jump right into maybe the reasons why, because honestly, if you read these documents, if you take in some of what I would consider some of the most important narrative, and if you also go out for yourself and use empirical observation and go up into a plane and see the horizon line rising to the eye of the observer, you go to a coastline and look out at large distances of water and see light towers and cityscapes and see them, you can actually intuitively and empirically see for yourself that it appears to be a flat plane. So to jump past a lot of the science and a lot of the empirical observation I'd like to talk about, and to jump into maybe the conspiracy of why they occulted this from us, is I think that this Copernicus, deep space, heliocentric, Big Bang, evolution model is to take the divinity away from us, is to take the source away from us. It's to take us away from the fact that we appear to be these beautiful, luminous light beings having downloaded into this avatar material body, and we're having this beautiful, magical experience. And one of the things that I found so overwhelmingly dark about this agenda, and especially if you look at scientists and any peer-reviewed scientists, anybody who actually went in through academia and are peer-reviewed academic practitioners in whatever level it might be, whether it's low-level academia, scientists, whatever study they might, especially the astronomers, the biologists, and all this stuff, all of them are overwhelmingly atheists. And at most, maybe an agnostic. And I think that right there is suspicious, that they're pushing a model that's taking the divine cosmic riddle out of it. They're taking the divinity out. They're taking spirituality out of it. And if you look at science at large, and I'm being critical here, science at large is materialist science. They do not believe in subtle energy. They do not believe in the spirit. They do not believe in hyperdimensional physics. They don't believe in metaphysical realities. They make fun of and will brush aside telepathy and clairvoyance and astral projection, all of these other very important, crushingly important topics that all of us in this alternative research community know are valid, especially if you follow some of the lineage of, say, Dean Radin and What in the Belief is Happening, that celebrated documentary that came out over a decade ago now, that really suggest overwhelmingly, especially things like the Dancing Woolly Masters and the Tao of Physics and some of the stuff from the 90s era. These things were very important documents to suggest that science and mysticism can exist in unison. So what this is they're taking the mysticism out, they're taking the spirituality, they're taking subtle energy out, they're taking our divine connection to the source out of this model. So if you say, I'm a heliocentric ball earth scientist guy, overwhelming, you're probably an atheist. You're not going to believe in any of this beautiful spiritual narrative. And again, I'm not coming from a dogmatic Christian perspective. I'm not coming from any organized religion perspective. I'm coming from the true esoteric Gnostic tradition of spiritual gnosis. And that transcends language. And I think what we're really talking about is a language that transcends language. That's the problem with using vocabulary, language right now. You go into the psychedelic realm and you commune with this ancient narrative with, say, entheogens and psychedelics and ayahuasca, which I've done 12 times now, and I've had a communion with psilocybin at least a half dozen times. It literally, you're passing past into a forbidden zone where language is not welcome. You're going into a region that's just true abstract world where the only two forces are light and dark, love and fear, hate and love. And it's so powerful. And either you align yourself with love and you commit to love and empathy and compassion, or the darkness will consume you. Literally, those are the only two cosmic forces we're dealing with here. As above, so below. You bring that into the material realm. You wake up every day and you're experiencing a psychedelic world, a psychedelic construct, a psychedelic holographic matrix zone. And really, every day you have the choice to either align yourself with love or to align yourself with fear. And the control matrix, the control system, the thing that's bringing us this fucking fake ball earth model, this heliocentric lies, is based in fear and it's based in atheism. And if you want to believe in the fucking ball, you're going to believe in some of these dark forces, some of this black magic hex, all the stuff that Mark Passio's talking about, all the black magic, culted stuff. Apply that to the ball model. This is black magic in its purest form. And until you realize that, until you look at this deception, all the other stuff, it doesn't really, you can't comprehend it until you go down this dark garden path and have your dark night of the soul and realize that we live on a beautiful, stunning, infinitely stable terra firma with this celestial heavens rotating over and above us, and the sun and the moon are rotating over and above some electromagnetic North Pole center, and that they're only 3,000 miles above the surface of the earth, 32 miles across. The sun and the moon are their only luminaries. The moon appears to be radiating its own luminous feminine energy. The sun and the moon, the masculine and feminine, are in their equal status. They're together in unison. It's the communion of the sacred masculine and the feminine, just like Mark Passio talks about. Well, you can look up into the night sky and see it. You can look up into the day sky and see it. What they took about is, if you believe in the heliocentric model, you believe in patriarchy. You believe in a male-dominated construct. You believe in a solar system that revolves around the male, masculine sun energy. And the moon has been demoted to just a little rock rotating around a planet.
Are you saying there are no other planets?
I believe at this point, and again, this might sound blasphemous and totally iconoclastic and this paradigm construct might be so shocking to a lot of people, but honestly, if you really gallop down this garden path and you stay the course of truth and you're looking at logic and reason and science.
Well, help take us down the path.
Okay. What appears to be, the planets do not appear to be terra firma planets that you can land Freemasons on, to quote Eric Dubé's funny quote, but they appear to be transcendental, metaphysical, hyperdimensional, cymatic, electromagnetic frequency orbs that might appear to represent the 7 layers of the firmament that goes up. If you follow Santos Bonacci's lessons and teachings on synchronicity and his beautiful, stunning overview of the ancient mystery school traditions that weave together all the ancient mystery school traditions into one unified concept of a synchronicity cosmology, I love this beautiful, intuitive concept that each planet might represent, the 7 planets might represent the 7 layers of the firmament as they go up. So what you're dealing with here is that I was a hardcore scientist, heliocentric, right-brained science guy my whole life up until this FE thing a year and a half ago. I was your quintessential male science guy who was into science fiction. I devoured all the science shows. I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson's reenactment of Cosmos. I watched Cosmos as a kid in the 70s. I've watched it all. I was so into that. I was like deep level into the heliocentric model. But one of the things that I never resonated with was astrology. And as a scientist, as a recovering conventional pseudoscientist who believed in the heliocentric model, I dismissed astrology right out. I never wanted anything to do with it. I thought it was quackery. I really thought it was nonsense. But now, in this post-FE awakening, when I look up into the night sky, I don't see deep space anymore. I don't see planets anymore. I see a transcendental, hyperdimensional, metaphysical, inexplicable, beyond language, stunning, abstract firmament. I don't know what I'm seeing, but it appears to be something so beyond description that I well up in complete awe and wonder at the night sky now. And now, thanks to Santos's direction, especially with some of these ideas that the planets are vibrating electromagnetic frequencies that emanate a certain resonance for each dimensional layer that they're representing. So in reality, what we might be looking up into is a hyperdimensional metaphysical firmament dome with each planet representing a different layer of this dome. And it could be an ascensionist ladder up into true awakening or spiritual ascensionist narrative as we rise up through this cosmic riddle.
What is some of the scientific evidence that led you to change your beliefs from round to flat? Because that's the big one that everybody has a problem with. We're looking at, well, if you look across Lake Michigan, you can see the city and you shouldn't be able to. It should have dropped off the line.
Okay. Exactly. I could literally, and
some of the key points.
Right. Some of the key points are that there appears to be no proof that there's actually any curvature on the planet or curvature of large bodies of water. So if you really look at the science, especially the science promoting and in support of the flat Earth model, what you appear to be looking at is empirical data that shows that huge expanses of land appear to be completely flat. Huge expanses of ocean appear to be completely flat. And one of the most shocking things to me as an artist, and my father was a draftsman, he worked for General Motors. I grew up with my father's draftsman table with all of his tools. I was playing with compasses and rulers as a little kid. I'm like probably a third generation draftsman illustrator from the old guard. I don't even know Photoshop. All I know is old traditional draftsman techniques. Literally all of my drawings and illustrations, I'm somewhat a visionary artist that have aligned myself with this truth narrative. All of it's based in traditional draftsman techniques of rulers and compasses and all that stuff. So when I came into this, I came into it as an artisan, and I was looking at the math and the science. And honestly, when I was in art school, I had 2 years in art school where I took structural drawing perspective class. I was so over advanced in the class that the teacher didn't even know how to categorize my yield and gave me a double A+ 2 years in a row. That's how well versed I was in 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective with sophisticated college level structural drawing, architectural drawing. That's how good I am at this narrative. So when I came into this flat Earth thing and they started talking about horizon lines and perspectives and vanishing points, it was my language. I know it. I see it. So one of the things, just to jump right to what I considered to be the smoking gun that completely crushes, and I'm just going to go ahead and come right out of the gates because there's a lot of different topics about this that I could talk about, and anybody who knows the general narrative can talk about all these things, but just to come right to the point here, and then we can kind of ease off of this as a closing sentiment. I really, truly believe that I have demonstrable, unbelievable empirical proof that the Earth is completely flat. And again, this is coming from my own empirical gnosis, my own use of the scientific method, my ability to use logic, reason, and common sense, and to look out free of cognitive dissonance, free of predictive programming, free of what we've been taught and conditioned and brainwashed with arguably this heliocentric model hoax, is this. And again, I'm coming at this to everybody, to all the flat Earth community, to the people that are still on the fence, to the ballers. I'm really honestly coming at this with total love and compassion for the human condition. I have no agenda. I'm on no one's payroll. I'm not a CIA operative. I'm not a shill. I'm just a seeker here. And I'm coming from a place of true love for the truth. And in celebration of that,
one question.
Yes.
If the Earth is flat, is there Earth on the top part, and then is there an under part? And that's
we don't know. There's a lot of speculation on that. One of the exciting things about this conversation is that there's a lot of unknowns, which I think is fine. For instance, to preface this conversation, Mark Passio at the conversation, the only time that the flat Earth, again, in respect for that, we just simply don't know. And that's okay. We don't know. Science always gives you definite answers for everything. There's no speculation in science. They're like, this is our theories, this is what we know. But I think to a certain extent, we just simply don't know. And in total love and respect for Mark Passio and all the fierce research he's done for years, and all of us like tipping our hat and taking our hat off to him, he, at the conference, this rogue personality came up and referenced I don't know if I'd say recklessly, but attentively referenced the very end of this Q&A question. He brought up the flat Earth conversation, and Bob Tuskin very rightly laughed and was like, okay, finally, here we are. Let's talk about this flat Earth thing. And I'm sitting in the audience, and this is 11:49 at night. We're all exhausted. It's coming on the midnight hour. Everyone's ready for a beer and to chill out and have small talk. So I knew that this was the final moment. But it took me a second when Mark Passio jumped in, and he said, you know what? The thing about the flat Earth that I'm confused about is explain to me the concept of the eclipse. That's a good question. And I'm sitting there in the crowd ready to respond, but also not confident or ready enough until I knew I had a convicted response or a response with conviction. It took me about 60 seconds to formulate a response to that. And then I took the confidence. I've got a response. And in celebration of what you talked about, of there being, we just simply don't know what's underneath us or what's above us. So this is my response to Mark Passio and to you. We don't know what's above or below. We don't know a lot of things. We don't know, in respect to Mark Passio in his conversation about, well, explain to us the eclipse. Like, how does that work into the flat model? What's that?
I say you better get to it.
Right. So what my response was going to be was, Mark, we don't really know the eclipse narrative. It could be a black sun. It could be a third luminary in the sky. We're just not quite sure. But one thing that's more important is to get to the essence of the question, whether it's flat or round. The question about the flat Earth conversation is, do we live on a ball or do we live on a flat plane? And from my own experience, I have two experiences that I'll say very briefly. One of them is in downtown Portland, Maine. When you stand downtown Portland, Maine on this perch that looks out over the Casco Bay, there's one spot that you can literally look out towards all the way to New Hampshire, 70 miles away as the crow flies, they like to say. And you can see literally the entire facade of the Presidential Mountain Range, the highest peak of the Presidential Mountain Range there in the Appalachian Range, 70 miles away. If you use their circular trigonometry, their science, where it drops 8 inches per mile squared, you should, generally speaking, at a 70-mile distance, only see the top third of this mountain range. But on the contrary, you see the entire facade of it. That's, to me, when I first saw that, I was dumbfounded. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Why am I seeing the whole mountain? That's what I call a 2-data-point empirical observation. 2 points. Your point as a conscious, sentient, homo sentient light being looking out at data point 2, which is the 70-mile away peak of those mountains. And you're calculating and looking, you're doing the math, the science that isn't coherent with what you're seeing. So you shut down the cognitive dissonance and you realize I appear to be looking across a flat plane. This is the thing that, to me, overwhelmingly proved to me, and I think to anybody else whose logic and really thinks about it, is the argument that crushes the ball model. It's the simple act of using their technology and buying an airplane ticket and getting on a window seat on a bright sunny day where there's no clouds, no chemtrails, no geoengineering, a beautiful, nice day where it's clear and you have a window seat and you can look out at the horizon at, I've seen it at 35,000 feet. I've seen it at 45,000 feet. It's usually in that little window, but you're literally sitting in their technology, sitting in one of their iron birds, I like to call it. And you have this beautiful, unprecedented perch in this postmodern era of sitting there, observing the beautiful, stunning Gaia below and the earth below. And to your complete astonishment and amazement, you see the horizon line ramping up to the eye of the observer as the horizon line is completely level with the plane. Now, one thing that's important is you always get a window seat above a wing, because the wing is your ruler. So you see this ruler going out level with the plane, and that ruler goes out and literally pierces the heart of that horizon line. It doesn't go above, it doesn't go below. And on a ball model at a 25,000 mile calculable ball model distance, you should be looking down at a horizon line as it recedes away from you and falls down. At this vantage point, generally speaking, you're seeing about 200 miles away, which is unbelievable distance, more so than you could see on a flat when you're down on the earth. So you're looking out at 200 miles away, and the vanishing point, the horizon line, is not only completely level with the plane, but it's not at all dipping down. That's what I call a 2-point data point observational perch. This is the thing that will blow your mind, will completely flatline your main line, and arguably overwhelmingly crushes the ball model. If you're honest with yourself, and if you shut off your cognitive dissonance, you shut off your predictive program, you shut off this heliocentric deception, is when you look across. And you will never forget this moment. You'll sit there and you'll turn your head and you'll look across the fuselage and you see this tiny little window. It's like a viewfinder of a camera, this tiny little window. And shockingly, the horizon line is completely level on the other side of that fuselage looking out that window. And you can imagine yourself as that third data point connecting 1, 2, 3. And you're thinking about the science and the math behind this geometry, and it literally creates a perfect straight line. There's zero curvature if you use empirical observation and just logic, reason, and common sense. You're looking out at a beautiful, transcendental, stunning flat plane. And that's when it hit me. When I went up there and looked out at that, and I've done it 6 times now, and every single time I'm overwhelmed with joy, with laughter, with confusion, with frustration, with anger. The full spectrum of the human condition will be wrapped up into one 5-minute moment when you have this experience. All you have to do is go up in a plane on a nice day and look at those 3 data points. You, the singular conscious sentient being with your empirical ability to use logic, reason, and common sense and the true scientific method. And you look out to the left, 200 miles away, horizon line level. And you look out to the right, horizon line 200 miles away, completely level. And you connect those 3 points. You can even bring a ruler. I brought rulers along and I've held rulers up. I've held rulers up to the horizon line looking out the window. I cannot find a single tiny bit of curvature. So again, however challenging this narrative might be, that to me overwhelmingly demonstrates the fact that we live on a flat plane.
Well, you and that's just definitely sparked a war in the
and
chat
that's just
room.
One of hundreds of proofs. I mean, you go down the list. If you guys want to argue with this, pick up this book right here, written in 1881. 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe. Come on, go ahead and pick up Eric Dubé's book. Unbelievable. He has a new book called 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe. Hey, if you're really a good reader and you like your academic rogue research, go dig into 1865. Synthetic astronomy. This is the real science, the real transcendental science of this big mystery. We've been lied to. The ball model is a hoax. But there's nothing wrong with that. Just take a deep breath, relax.
All good.
It's all good. It's all fine. We're sentient, beautiful, wonderful light beings of infinite complexity and magnitude, and this is okay. We're just in a battlefield of deception and love, and just choose love.
So here's the thing. When we step out of the frequency fence that we've all been in for all of these years, and we look at what's actually right in front of our faces, right? Like when we truly see exactly what's there at face value, it's undeniable. Yeah. You can't argue. It's unarguable. You can't argue with it. It's like, when you do the research and you make the effort yourself, and I'm talking to the people in the chat room,
right.
If you really want to know the truth, do the fucking research. For me, it comes down to my gut, and this is why. Because when I was a child, my first memory is watching my cousin walk on the moon, okay? And my very first memory is being in a playpen looking at the television with my father and all his buddies and knowing that I was related to the person on the television. And then
the moon landing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because that was my first memory. No, wait. That's my first memory. I'm serious. That is my very first memory
was watching the Vietnam War on a black and white TV as I was eating dinner in like 1973. They used to put that stuff in the airwaves.
That's right.
And then to meet my cousin, Neil Armstrong, and to ask him questions and start drilling him and my father with questions.
Oh, Neil Armstrong's your cousin? I didn't know this.
Yeah. So what? I'm like asking him all these questions and they're trying to shut me up.
Oh, wow. Neil Armstrong's your cousin.
Like, something's not right here.
Yeah, because you didn't want to talk about it.
At a young age, like something is not right about this situation.
Wow.
They're making it, or they are like, something's not right. And why are they trying to shut me down every time I ask a question? I grew up in that family. So now when I ask a question, I don't back down.
The audience has a question about pilots. Are they involved in some major conspiracy?
No, definitely, absolutely not. I think that pilots, like all of us, just go along to get along. I think the conditioning is so deep. I don't think they know or ever even thought about it. As far as I know, when I was on a flight with this Eric Dubé book and I was reading it voraciously, I've actually read it twice. But at one time I was flying out to Colorado and back, and I actually came up on some pilots during a break where I was at some cafe and we were in an airport, and I walked up to them with total conviction and confidence and a sense of recklessness. And I presented this book to a pilot and was like, hey, have you heard about this flat earth conspiracy? And I just wanted to ask you, do you compensate for the curvature of the earth by dipping your plane down every 60 seconds to curve around this arch? Or do you just level it out? He's like, no, we don't do anything. We just put it in automatic cruise control and we just sit back and watch the gauges. And if you, this is the other thing that's on the note of that, if you get into a plane and actually do this 3-point observation and you look out and see the horizon line rising to your eye on both sides, and you are actually honest with yourself and you connect those 3 points and it appears to be a straight line and not a curve. The other thing, the other exercise, intellectual exercise, is to imagine, just to feel you flying completely level. You never compensate for the curvature by dipping down. There's never any feeling of the plane dipping down. And I'm into cars. I like technology. I would feel the momentum of a dip. Nothing. You're completely level and flat, flying over a flat level plane. And as far as I know, I think the pilots are just as ignorant as we are. And probably there's a lot of pilots right now that are waking up to this that are fucking scared, that don't want to say a word because they're afraid. It's like being a pilot and saying you saw a UFO.
Okay,
You'll be dismissed.
One of the comments is the reason your visual horizon line argument is false is because the way the light bends when you're looking
here
over
we got
a large
refraction.
distance.
Again, these arguments of refraction I think are brought up. And if it bend, why didn't it bend the other way? Why don't we get a convex illusion? Why don't we get more of a concave one? Why does it actually create the illusion that it's a straight line? If you want to bring ideas like that into it, why does that amazingly bend the light to appear to be a straight plane? Isn't that anomalous? I mean, I understand the sentiment, but it's a kind of a ridiculous argument. Again, you're falling into predictive programming, into cognitive dissonance. You're wanting to resolve this problem with the conditioning brainwashing of the heliocentric model, which is using the false science of, say, the refraction of this type of thing, which I, again, appreciate, but in the context, I don't think it's accurate with this observation.
But you are saying that the other bodies, such as the moon and the sun, are round.
Well, again, we're not really quite sure if they're spherical or if they're a disc or what kind of effects happening. I'm speaking from
Or is it just a projection, as Saralise is saying?
I don't think, I think the projection model is a speculative, and you could bring in some of the holographic stuff into it and some of that narrative. But as far as we can see from a materialist perspective, the sun and the moon appear to be some kind of transcendental luminaries that have some kind of electromagnetic energy field, and whether they're spherical or a disc shape is open to speculation, but I don't think that's the question. The question is it flat or round? Do we live on a ball Earth or is it a flat plane? And you know what? When I listened to Manly P. Hall's 9-hour lecture talking about the ancient teachings, the mystery school teachings of the Manly P. Hall narrative, I was dumbfounded about 2/3 of the way in when he spent an entire hour talking about the flat plane and the luminaries above from a flat Earth cosmology. Manly P. Hall actually talks about at length about the flat Earth cosmology, and so do all the ancient mystery school traditions, all the ancient mystery, all the mystics and sages. It's all flat Earth cosmology. The only bullshit we've been fed about this ball Earth model is some high-level Masons with lineage from Europe over the last 500 years have been spinning this Copernican, Galileo, Newton, Neil deGrasse Tyson bullshit. It's a big lie, just as much as all the heavy black magic you want to look at in occulted literature, occulted history, occulted music. Go down the garden path of celebrity black magic, psyops, or Dave McGowan's Weird Tales Inside the Canyon, or whatever kind of thing you want to gallop down. We're talking about a collection of high-level sorcerers that have been tricking us to believe all of these false narratives, and one of them, overwhelmingly, is the ball Earth.
Passionate. Absolutely passionate,
Very
Watson.
passionate.
And this is not a topic you're going to prove tonight. It's you've opened the door, you've now laid out what people can do to start, and you've laid out the understanding of why they would put us in this ball Earth to remove the divine. And you're showing how the mystery of life is so much more important than anything. People are like, well, why does it even matter? The ball's flat, it's round. What does it even matter to me? And it does matter because of our divine connection to the whole thing and the mystery that it opens. This is the end of the show, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank you so much, Sean, for coming on. Folks, this is Sean Young of Dune fame, of Blade Runner fame. She's been a replicant. She's lived in the year 10,191, and she's hung out with Jim Carrey and Tone Loc, all right? This woman, just a great person, a great being, and a powerful person that has now come forward out of Hollywood to share her truth and strength with you. So everybody give a big round of applause and cheers for Sean Young, for her bravery of coming forward. And then everyone, Watsun Atkinsun. You can find him at watsunatkinsun.com because he is my special guest tonight, believe it or not.
His wild card guest.
And my wild card guest put it out on the line. And we wanted to challenge you. We wanted to make you angry. We wanted to throw topics at you. We could have gone all night. You know, all the hot topics that everybody says don't talk about, we'll talk about them right here. And so, without fear, we wonder without fear.
And in celebration of Freeman, I'm just totally honored to be in his company and to having this conversation with everybody. And I've been a huge fan of your work for years now. So it's very exciting to be here and to have this moment with you and Freeman community at large. So thank you for that.
I knew this was going to be a good time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Freeman, for
thanks, guys.
I appreciate it.
See you on the other side.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch with all of you and all of them too. Yeah.
Keep it flat.
Ciao for now.
All right. Good night, friends. Thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to end with, we never got into the flat Prince theory.
All right. Yeah. Well, get to the beginning of the show to understand that.
Well, next time.
The elevator is the devil. And if the elevator tries to bring you down, just punch a higher floor. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.